Chapter 15, The Next Thing I Knew. Journal entry, time and date, unknown. Location, unknown. The next thing I knew, I was flat on my back. It had knocked me over with the power of a pro linebacker. The horn blast stopped abruptly but was replaced with the sound of something pouring into this cell. Some form of cold liquid was pouring over me and onto the floor. It sounded as if the thing right next to me was actually drinking the stuff. All at once, the flow shut off, and the thing retreated to the other side of the room. I could hear it wheezing and shuddering. What the hell just happened? I collected myself and came to a squatting position, hunched on the balls of my feet, readying myself for what may come next. I questioned whether I should take some sort of action. Perhaps I should try to communicate again. Then before I could speak, it made a noise from what I assumed was its mouth. Indeed, a human mouth.
Foom. Foom.
It said, and sloshed back and forth on its side of the room. I couldn't see anything. I was holding out my arms like antennas, but I was no ant, and I lacked the ability to pick up anything but empty space. Who are you? Where are we?
Yeah, and Foom. Foom.
It sounded human-like, the type of communication you'd expect from a deaf person, or perhaps someone afflicted with severe Down syndrome.
Yeah, Foom.
Hello? I can't understand you, I said, hearing the fear in my own voice. Mentally handicapped or not, human connection of any kind was a much welcome change.
Foom. Yeah, Foom.
Are you trying to say soon? I asked while getting into a standing position. I'm sorry, I can't understand you. My name is... Before I could finish, I heard it rush toward me, the sound of the liquid floor splashing with each footstep. I quickly began to sidestep, but kept my arms out in defense. At this point, I didn't know its intention, and I didn't think I could handle a fight right now. It had no trouble locating me. It quickly grabbed my left forearm with a power that seemed inhuman. It pulled me closer and flipped my arm over so that the vulnerable underbelly of my arm was facing up. Its hands felt human, although possibly missing a few fingers. With its free hand, it spread my captured hand open so that the surface of my palm yielded as much real estate as possible. Before I had an opportunity to recoil, it started tapping on my open palm. Tap, tap, tap and pause, short tap, then nothing, then 3 taps. As it tapped, it was trying to say something.
Yeah, Foom.
It repeated this process over and over. Something clicked, and I suddenly understood this to be Morse code, which I knew, but not well. As a young man, my father had bestowed upon me this nearly obsolete military communication tool. It had been a while since I'd used this superannuated language, but I did begin to recall, and about the 4th time around, I got it. Tap, tap, tap and pause, short tap, then nothing, then 3 taps. It's food, I said out loud, startling myself with the volume of excitement in my voice. You're telling me it's food?
Yeah, Foom.
It uttered and patted my hand several times in what seemed to be return excitement.
Foom.
It said again, this time slapping the wall behind me where the liquid had come out.
Foom.
That liquid sewage coming out of the wall was food? I asked, feeling a little nausea come over me.
Yeah.
It said and started to tap something else out onto my palm. Dash, dash, space, dot, dash, dash. At first, it would have to rap out the signal on my arm several times before I would get the message. But eventually it became second nature, and the translations came quick. The faster I got with it,
The more the tapping became an almost audible conversation, to the point where I created his voice in my mind.
My name is Jeffrey Rhodes. I'm a pastor from Maine. Well, I was a pastor from Maine. Yes, that stuff coming out of the wall is food. Well, not really food, but it sustains life on some level. If I had to guess, I'd say it was some sort of amino acid mixture. Minerals, who knows? I'd love to tell you that you get used to it, but I don't think that's possible.
I'm so glad you're not mental.
I thought. But in my old habit of saying what I was thinking, the words took a trip from my brain and right out of my mouth. I felt myself wince.
Sorry.
But he was already laughing and patting my arm in a frenzy that conveyed his amusement. His laugh was a belabored mixture of pleasure and pain, as if it felt good to laugh, but he paid for it.
How long have you been here?
I asked, terrified of the answer.
I I don't know.
He tapped out on my palm.
You don't know?
I asked, and then realized I couldn't discern time passing in this place either. Yes, I guess I can understand why. He gripped my hand and shook it. It was one of the simplest of human gestures, a handshake, but conveyed a complex intellect that animals could not share. I was so happy that this man was not some terrible monster trapped in this cell with me. After all, in this place, anything was possible. I felt a little relieved, but it was more than that. I was finally able to share this burden of fear with another human. He was possibly the only other person I'd ever know who could and would understand. Over time, I began learning some of his dialect, negating the need for him to tap out everything. Communication between us became a mixture of mumbling, tapping, and thoughtful pauses. I hadn't yet conjured the nerve in this pitch-black introduction to ask him why he couldn't talk. That would have to come later when a certain amount of rapport and trust existed. Even in a place like this, one was mindful of respecting boundaries. He continued to beat on my palm the stories of his life and how he, a God-fearing pastor of all people, had gotten here, to this hell. He was 45 and had spent most of his adult life in Beals, an island off the coast of Maine. It seems we shared an affinity for island life. For more than a decade, he had been the lead pastor at a small congregation on the island. He was married with 2 kids, a boy and a girl, a dog, and a white picket fence. Jeff was living the American dream, or at least as close as you could get to it those days. The story of how he got here unwound in terrifying details. He and his close friend Jacob were on an offshore fishing excursion in Jacob's brand new skiff. Maine had been through a bad winter storm, and snow had prevented them from taking Little Daisy, named after Jacob's wife, out for several months. Beals had been experiencing an early winter, but he and Jacob capitalized on a lucky window where the sun came out and melted the freezing shore. They had gone a few clicks out from Donovan Cove in search of some Atlantic salmon, which spawned that time of year, and were considered by some locals a nuisance due to their exorbitant numbers. Jeff continued tapping.
We were both really excited and had just arrived at a spot that our fish finder assured us had tons of fish beneath. It was beautiful out. I mean, really beautiful. We had both just tossed a line in and grabbed a cold one. We were maybe 5 minutes into relaxing when Jacob got a nibble, then me. We both jumped up and reached for our poles. I nearly fell over, I was so excited. But what happened next made me question everything, including my faith.
My hand began to feel sore from all the poking. Whether Jeff knew it or not, as he got into his story, his hands became the extension of his emotions. The faster he typed out the messages on my hand, the harder the taps and dashes came to support the narrative. Eventually, I would need to switch hands. The darkness in this cell was thick and heavy. There were no gradients to discern depth, no shadows to understand our surroundings. It was as pitch black as anything I had ever witnessed. It was as penetratingly dark as the eternal blackness of those alien eyes. No hope availed in this dark cell. The story he was telling me only served to make the darkness surrounding us even more suffocating, more claustrophobic, more paranoid. At the same time, because of the darkness, my mind felt better able to visualize his words. I almost felt like I was on that boat with Jeff and Jacob. For a moment, I thought I could actually feel the brisk sea wind tightening my face with its chill.
We both seemed to get hit at the same time and snagged our poles up hard, and began reeling in what we thought might just be the catch of our lives. Something powerful had our lines, and pretty soon we were sitting on our butts with our legs braced against the side of the boat. The wind began to pick up and the seas were getting super choppy. Almost in unison, Jacob's pole leapt out of his hand, then mine. There was no holding on to them. We both realized that our lines were not connected to a fish, and shot each other a look that said, maybe we should get out of here. Standing up, we both witnessed bright lights coming up out of the water, next to the boat. Clouds seemed to literally appear out of nowhere, and before we knew it, we couldn't see more than 20 feet in front of us. It was like slow motion. I looked over at Jacob and said, "Let's get the hell out of here." He must have read my mind because he was already in the driver's seat and ready to go. But the engine wouldn't turn over. The water all around us began to boil, and then we heard a low hum. Sparks were igniting in the atmosphere, like different colored lightning strikes. It's safe to say we both were terrified out of our minds. Jacob reached under the steering wheel and opened the glove compartment where he kept a gun. I didn't understand what he thought he was going to do with it, but that's human nature, I guess. What happened next changed the way I view humanity. It changed everything. It would still bring me to tears if I had eyes to cry with.
Eyes to cry with? What do you mean? You're blind?
I asked as an archipelago of goosebumps erupted throughout my body. Tap, 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 dash. He tapped back a little slower in this one.
No. The bastards took them. One at a time.
Shocked, I blurted,
Oh, God.
I couldn't help but think this could be my future. My heart began pulsing fast, a new fear rising and surging through me.
They took your eyes?
I now realized I was going to lose my life, piece by piece. After all, these dismembered body parts didn't get here by accident. I felt a numbing sensation at the back of my neck, coursing its way to the top of my head. Tap, tap, dash, tap.
And my tongue.
A little moan escaped from him as he tapped that out, but he quickly shut off the pity valve and relayed.
But I would happily do it again if it meant, in the end, I would eventually be with the Lord.
I could tell he was a strong man. He had to be to go through what he had been through. I couldn't bring myself to say anything, so I just grabbed the hand that he was using to tap on my palm and gave it a firm squeeze. He returned the squeeze, and we both had a moment of silent understanding. Dash, tap, pause, tap, dash.
It's actually a blessing.
He tapped on my hand.
A blessing? You think having your tongue and eyes taken from you is a blessing? Really a man of faith.
I said, but couldn't help the words from sounding cynical. I've heard of taking the high road before, and I was all for pacifism. The Gandhis, Tolstoys, and Dalai Lamas of the world. They had their place, but this was different. This was aliens from another planet who have taken us out of our homes and violated our lives in the most gruesome of ways. They deserve no pacifistic ideals, and if put in a place of judgment, they deserved only torture and death in return.
Not in the way you're seeing it. You must understand, not having to see these hideous bastards truly is a blessing. And the eyes lie, Nate. You can't always trust your eyes.
I thought of Ro just then. He had said the same.
Not having a tongue,
Jeff continued.
through which I would no doubt scream profanities at them and only get myself into more trouble. That too, in a way, is a blessing.
I get your point, but don't expect me to go begging these sons of bitches to rip my eyes out. I immediately wished I could take back that last bit.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that.
It's okay.
He tapped.
I pray this doesn't happen to you.
Don't you have hope to get out of here, though?
I asked, trying to be more mindful of my rhetoric.
What if we can escape? I'd like to escape with as much of myself as I can.
I don't think that's a possibility, Nate.
Why? I said, surprised.
I'll get to that. Let me continue my story.
Letting out a sigh, Jeff continued.
Where was I?
You had mentioned your friend, Jacob, reached in the glove compartment to get his gun, I think.
Yes, that's right. Jacob. He didn't do what I thought he was going to do. I thought I was going to use the gun against whatever it was coming out of the sea. Instead, he looked at me with pure terror in his eyes, put the barrel of the gun against his head and yelled out,
I can't do this again. I'm sorry. If you make it, please tell my wife and daughter that I love them.
I screamed after him to please stop, to please not do it, but he pulled the trigger and blew his brains out into the sea.
I can't do this anymore!
I'm so sorry, Jeff.
He was one of the people I truly thought had faith, and in the end, he was willing to let go of his ideals, his humanity, and his faith in God in that one poignant moment.
Whimpers came from Jeff, and I knew I could not comprehend his level of pain. What do you say after a revelation like that? I had enough trouble knowing what to say to those grieving when people died of old age and natural causes. This was entirely worse. I opted to say nothing and let him continue.
These aren't just the sobs of sadness.
He continued tapping with a little more pressure.
These are also sobs of anger. This man who was supposed to be my best friend, a Christian man, a family man, well, he took the easy way out. In that moment, I lost not only my friend, but my hope. I had known Jacob since we were just kids, and he was willing to leave this earth like that. I'll tell you, my faith has been tested, but the one thing I've learned is that you can't let the world dictate who you are or who you'll become. I can't completely blame him when he said he couldn't do it anymore. It made me realize he was possibly living a nightmare of an existence. I don't know why he never told me, but being here now, I guess I can sympathize with what he did. But I haven't been able to bring myself to completely forgive him. I would never have left my friend alone to face what you and I are facing now.
I felt soreness emanating from my jaw and realized I was clenching my teeth hard with concern, in sympathetic anger.
What do you think they are? What is all this?
I asked, not sure if I really wanted to know the answer. Jeff tapped.
My guess is that they want something from us. I don't think they take just anyone. There has to be a reason. You see, I don't think they're from some other planet, or some silly idea of being from a different galaxy billions of light years away. That doesn't even make sense. Why come here from millions of light years away just to toil in the minuscule affairs of our tiny little planet? I think it's all a lie we've been told. The whole ancient aliens spiel. I believe they're demons.
Demons?
Ro had said the same thing.
They don't look like demons.
I said.
And what do demons look like, Nate?
They look like...
I paused to consider. Images of silly horror movies, horned Halloween masks and giant winged creatures populated in my mind, and I found myself disappointed, giving the only answer I could.
Yeah, I don't know.
Exactly,
said Jeff as he continued tapping.
Is it really easier to believe that aliens from millions of light years away came to our tiny planet in the corner of the massive galaxy? But more than that, that they came to just the right one out of hundreds of billions of galaxies out there?
I couldn't tell you, to be honest.
I said, hoping to hear no more of this. I was scared enough believing they were aliens. The prospect of this being demonic made me nauseous. Jeff was a man of convictions, he had to be, and those convictions were coming at a cost on my palms as he pelted me with long responses. I felt like I was getting two forms of torture on this ship, one from the aliens and one from the Chinese water torture of Jeff's tapping.
Or is it really easier to believe that this was all an accident? That we have a moon that's exactly the right distance from Earth to sustain tides which make life possible? Or that the sun and moon are both so perfectly aligned that the chances of them creating perfect solar eclipses on Earth is a probability that even scientists will tell you is 1,000,000,000 to 1.
Jeff paused for a moment, maybe expecting me to say, wow, or something. When I remained silent, he started tapping even faster.
Did you know? The moon is exactly 400 times smaller than the sun, and ironically, or not so ironically, the moon is also 400 times closer than the sun is to the Earth, which, when viewed from Earth, blocks out the sun perfectly.
I didn't have an encyclopedia to cross-reference Jeff's findings, but he did seem to know what he was talking about. He continued to regale me.
Do you know what the Bible says about demons?
Jeff tapped this expecting a response, but I gave none. I didn't want to know. I didn't care. Right now, all I cared about was getting off this damn ship.
Principalities, Nate,
Jeff continued.
For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Ephesians 6:12. Notice that part about high places? They're above us, not below. Always have been.
I suppose anything is possible, Jeff, but it doesn't really matter who they are or where they're from. Whoever they are, they've got us.
Just think about it.
So, what happened next on the boat?
I said, shifting the attention back to the story, mostly to keep myself from succumbing to the fear swirling in my mind. I sensed that Jeff had lost his place again and cued him. Your friend had just... I started to say, but didn't need to finish.
Jacob was now dead, and I wasn't. I was left there to stand amongst the forces of pure evil, as I now know them to be, and as you will soon know as well. 3 triangle-shaped UFOs slipped out of the water and hovered about 20 feet above me, each about the size of a 2-bedroom house. No sound came from them. In fact, it seemed like all other sound was gone too. All I could hear was my breathing and my heartbeat.
What did they look like? I asked, never actually having seen the outside of one.
They were kind of digital.
Yes, exactly. Digital. There's something to that, isn't there?
I said, feeling a validation which connected my experience to his.
There's something digital to their nature. I just don't know what it means. What do you think it is?
I really don't know for sure, but possibly instead of being aliens, they're interdimensional beings? The nether realm? Anyway, back to the story.
Right. Sorry.
So they're alone on that boat. The only thing I could think to do was to kneel and begin to pray. I prayed that whatever was happening here, that my wife and kids were taken care of. Of course, I also prayed that I would be spared and not be abducted by these damned aliens. But as you can see, that didn't happen.
I shot an agreeing glance at him, but quickly remembered that, 1, it was pitch black in here, and 2, Jeff didn't have eyes. Jeff hadn't seen any of the agreeing nods, frowns, or looks of concern that I'd been pitching to him during the course of our conversation, for lack of a better term. It wouldn't matter if the light of 1,000 suns poured in. Jeff would only see black, just black. Tap dash, pause.
The look in Jacob's eyes.
Jeff continued, but his taps were a bit lighter. I sensed his sadness. To have that kind of pain and not be able to cry was a torture unto itself.
His eyes were just so fearful. I've seen people afraid before, but not like that. My blindness has given me another kind of sight. It has allowed me to be tormented by the last moment with Jacob, right before he blew his brains out. It plays over and over again in my mind, and I haven't found a way to shut it off. I can't tell you how nice it is to be able to share this with another human. If it wasn't for my faith, I would have killed myself 1,000,000 times over. These demonic aliens are just a sliver of the torment I'm dealing with. Most of it comes from within.
Hearing this, I understood that while the rest of us can simply open our eyes and erase old memories with a flood of fresh reality, Jeff would never have the opportunity to escape the memories that came with darkness.
When you're blind, all you can rely on are your memories, joyful and painful memories alike. They existed in that plane of black. When the darkness becomes your friend, your memories are alive and seep in like a sickness. The torment I experience won't be physical. It will be in the form of thoughts. I will spend the rest of whatever life I have belonging to my memories, and them to me.
I can't even imagine going through what you've been through. If nothing else, I'm glad I can be here to listen, or whatever you want to call this. I placed a hand on Jeff's shoulder, which was unusually muscular for someone who'd been in captivity for who knows how long. I felt him tense up at first, and then slowly relax. Who knows how long it's been since he's felt the touch of a caring hand. The only physical touch he's been given here has been at the hands of these sadistic, evil aliens.
Tap dash.
While Jacob's brains became chum for the fish in the sea, I was left there alone, surrounded by the enemy. The worst kind of enemy. The enemy of God. And for a man of God, that was terrifying. They hovered there for what felt like minutes. I was on my knees praying, and the next thing I knew, a warm white light shot down on me. At first, it was just mild, but it began to burn my skin. I refused to scream. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. I prayed and prayed like I've never prayed before. And God spoke to me. I've been a pastor all my life, and not once has God directly spoken to me. Not until now.
I felt myself shaking my head in disbelief. But why? Why would this be difficult to believe? I was on an alien ship in a cell of castrated human parts. I have always been a man that was on the fence about God. I didn't really know what to think about it. I didn't necessarily think it was a lie, but maybe a delusion.
What did he say to you?
I said, trying to subdue the dubiety in my voice. It was too late. Jeff already picked up on and consumed my little taste of doubt pie.
You don't think I know it sounds crazy? And if you're not a man of God, and I'm assuming you're not, it's even more difficult to believe. But what God told me is that I needed to stay strong, and that He was with me. But more importantly, He also told me that you would be coming.
Me? That I'd be here? Yeah, I'm done.
I pulled my hand out of his grasp and backed away from him.
I'm done. I'm done with this, man. That's it. This is too crazy. God spoke to you and told you that I was gonna, show up in your cage with you?
I said, inhaling deeply and regretting doing so, as I gulped the toxic atmosphere into my lungs and released a volley of coughs.
I'm sorry, man, but this is where I have to stop.
I was angry, and I didn't exactly know why.
Hey, you.
Jeff beckoned. With no arm to tap on, he was limited by his main mouth.
Hey, you.
I'd had enough conversation with Jeff to comprehend what he was trying to say.
It's you. It's you.
Why me, Jeff? What the hell for? I don't even believe in him.
I sloshed back and forth through the putrid liquid beneath me, ignoring the disgusting things brushing against me. The volume in my voice was germinating with anger.
I'm not special, Jeff, okay? Why is this all happening to me? I'm just a damn programmer from some stupid little town that no one's ever heard of. I just want to go back to my stupid, boring life with my stupid cat and my stupid...
I stopped myself from committing to stating that my girlfriend was stupid. I was taking plenty of liberty knowing Jeff couldn't respond without my arm in his grasp. Jeff stood silent. He'd probably dealt with hundreds, if not thousands of people who were God-angry and unwilling to listen. After a few more minutes of my soliloquy, I ran out of anger and lamented quietly under my breath.
But BS.
Jeff broke the silence, saying, "Come here," in his unique way.
Mumia.
After a long and difficult pull of toxic air into my lungs, followed by a defeated exhale and residual hacking, I lumbered back over to Jeff and assumed the position. I held my arm out, and as if by some sort of sixth sense, Jeff located my arm and began tapping hard. Tap dash, tap pause, tap dash.
God told me that I would meet a tall man with black hair and a scar on the white of his right eye. He said to tell that man that he needed to believe and to pray in his time of need. He said to tell you that was the only way.
The fact that Jeff couldn't see me but knew I had both black hair and a scar on my right eye was worrisome. To guess that someone had a scar on their face was one thing, but to know that the scar was on the sclera on the bottom of my right eye was impossible. There was absolutely no way of him knowing that. I felt the sting of tears, not of sadness, but perhaps the tears of undoing, the tears of pride releasing, tears from a place inside that knew the truth and suppressed it at all cost. I forced them down. I was not a crying man, and this was not a crying time.
Okay, Jeff, you got me. I don't know how you knew that, but you got me there.
I once again pulled away from Jeff and began pacing even more excitedly now. The fact was, I didn't know how he knew, and I wasn't willing to excuse this away as some sort of parlor trick. But I also wasn't willing to believe that Jeff had some kind of direct connection to God, or whatever. If it had been a trick, some sort of extra sensory magical hoax, then I wanted to know how, and I wanted to know why.
There's no heaven, no hell, no energy ball wandering the universe, and certainly no Lord Xenu extracting me from some stupid volcano,
I said, with a thrash of fresh rejection. I still didn't know why, but I was angry. But I wasn't angry at Jeff or the world. I was angry at myself. I went to my side of the cell and sat back down. Jeff, equally frustrated, went back to his side and did the same.
You don't know, man. Who the hell do you think you are anyway?
Having the last word didn't quite carry that same level of satisfaction when the recipient literally could not speak a last word. I sat there silent, trying to forget where I was and who I was. I thought about Kate. I thought about my cat. I thought about my cushy job And I also thought about how all those things were now gone. Mostly, though, I thought of what I would see when I awoke. I fantasized waking up in my bed and Kate slugging me in the side because I was snoring. Like the child in the back seat of a car on a road trip, my head slowly sank on the precipice of sleep, jolting back up once my head found nothing to rest on. Flash dreams of my past tickled the moments of unconsciousness with its feathers of come hither. The barrier between reality and dreams became thin. I was afraid to fall asleep, but equally afraid to stay awake. I couldn't define which was worse in this amorphous state. Awake, my body dies. Asleep, I die to my dreams. And if I sleep, I hope I sleep for good. But I knew that I would not be allowed to die peacefully, for in this sleep there would be no dreams, only nightmares.